Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Sending the Community with me, Hafiz Muhammad Umar. And for today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Amruti Choudhry. Dr. Choudhry, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Dr. Amruti is an amazing qualified GP with many different hats on. I'll let her introduce herself very, very shortly. Before I go to that, just to let our listeners know that this session is a pre-record. We are recording this on Thursday, the 11th of December 2025. I know it's being played a few days later. So please do not ring into the studios for this particular show. If you have any queries or questions, please drop us an email or a message, and we can certainly address those afterwards. So it is not a live show, rather pre-recorded show. So please do not ring in or send in your message during the show today. Lots and lots of things are happening at the moment with preparation for Christmas. And one of the things I mentioned last week as well is the need for us to be very cautious around fire safety, particularly for the most vulnerable people in our communities. And for next week, we will have David Lynch with us, who is a fire community safety officer based in Bedfordshire. He works for Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Services, and he has very kindly arranged for a visit to the local fire station for one of our most vulnerable adults within our communities to make them better aware of managing risks around fire. And also, the fire service offers free visits to homes to test your smoke alarms, etc. It's a national initiative. So whether you live in Luton or elsewhere, you can contact your local fire station. It takes a few weeks for the visit to be arranged. They can come and test the smoke alarms free of charge and have a look around your house and give you advice on what precautions you can take to make your home more safe. So please do bear that in mind. All right, Dr. Chowdhury, coming back to you. Tell us a bit about yourself then, please.
Okay, so I wear lots of hats, but I am a mother, I am a daughter, I'm a wife, I am a doctor, I'm a life coach. Like, I am a wonderful human on this planet, as all of our listeners and you. And I think that's important to note, because often we just, kind of just talk about the one thing. But I know I'm here to give my professional opinion, my opinion as a mother of a SEND child, but also as someone who has ADHD and dyslexia myself. So just a little bit about me. I was kind of always top of the class in my in my education. I was always very high achieving, but I didn't know that I had ADHD or I struggled with dyslexia. I had no idea, because they were diagnosed much later in life. And I'd always had an outlet through food. Actually, food was the thing that provided me comfort. So in my journey, I was very up and down with my weight, and I just thought that there was something kind of wrong with me, because I was like, why don't I have this under control, And lots of stigma from the community, because I was overweight most of my life. And then I got married. I had my first child, my second child, and then I was the heaviest that I'd ever been. And so I tried everything under the sun to lose the weight. And it was only when I understood about my mind management and emotional regulation, because food was the way that I kind of buffered or kind of dealt with my negative emotion. And so I learned how to manage my mind and regulate my emotions by hiring a life coach. And then I combined that all with my medical knowledge and my psychology knowledge. And I was able to lose nearly half my body weight, 42 kilos, and keep it off, which is great. And
Wow.
so I was only kind of meant to do that alongside GP, like I was like, okay, this is magic. I need to teach it to the world. So kind of trained as a life coach, and I did lots of certifications, because I'm a serial learner. I love learning, and I love delivering and teaching, and empowering the community. And so I was only meant to do that alongside GP. But then I realized that God gave me this gift, and this is my calling in life. This is my purpose. And so I gave up clinical practice as a GP, which was very hard because in the community, being a doctor is kind of very highly respected. And my parents were like, and other community members were like, what are you doing giving up being a doctor? You've spent like decades of your life trying to do this. And I said, I'm not giving up being a doctor. I'm using all of that knowledge that I have, but through coaching, because I feel like that has really helped get to the root of so many things. So now in my private practice, I do weight loss coaching. I do coaching on how to get on with your mother-in-law without her changing, because that was my journey as well. I learned how to get on with my mother-in-law, and this was after 10 turbulent years. And then what happened is I was happily coaching, but I was really struggling with my youngest son. I was using all of my coaching tools on him, but still things were really, really like difficult. He had a lot of like meltdowns. He was really struggling with school avoidance. And only recently we found out that we got a private diagnosis because we weren't willing to wait 4 years on the NHS. So we got a private diagnosis of autism with pathological demand avoidance. So this is a type of autism that's not very well understood. So I'm happy to go into that. But it's just been very eye-opening, like my life has completely changed. I've really had to learn how to regulate my own nervous system much more because I'm co-regulating my son. And I've had to deal with a lot of challenges along the way, which I'm happy to go into.
Wow, absolutely amazing introduction there. Thank you so much for that. Let's sort of like break that down then. So start with Amruti as a young girl then. Were you brought up in London or any other part of the world? What was your early schooling and background like?
Yeah, so I was actually born in Mombasa in Kenya. So we
Oh,
have
wow.
East African roots. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I came here when I was 1. So I kind of am more or less fully bred here. And my parents are of Indian origin, and they came here, very hardworking, very like kind of having to find their place in the world.
Yeah.
And so in our culture, emotional regulation is not really a thing, right? And people don't know, like, how to tend to emotions. And my parents didn't do anything wrong. They were phenomenal parents. They tried their absolute best. But I'm talking about in general in our community, it was quite hard. You weren't allowed to really be angry or be, have like to cry. It was very much like, quick, eat this. And like, because they were feeling uncomfortable that I was having an emotion, And so I learned very, very early on that it's not acceptable to, display certain behaviors. And so that's probably why I became a people pleaser. I thought I have to please the people around me to be the good girl. And, I really like focused on academics then because that was where I thrived.
And did you go to a school in London or was that another part of the world?
Yeah, I went to school in London. I've been in London all my life since then. And yeah, I still live in London. So
And
yeah.
and so during the schooling years, you said you were a high achiever. Did you at any stage ever feel as though perhaps the trace of dyslexia, for example, or ADHD made you feel different to your peers at all, or did you just think everybody is the same?
In those days, I didn't really know too much different. I just realized that I had to work a lot harder than other people. I remember in my education, if, say, someone took 2 weeks for an exam, I would start like 6 to 8 weeks before. And like I would not only, like I didn't know this at the time, but not only would I have to like read the books, but I really struggled with the reading. And I realized like intuitively that actually I was better at listening. So what I would do is, like, for example, in my medical training, I would read the whole textbook and dictate myself reading it. And then I would listen and write at the same time because that was something that really helped me. So, I figured it out, but I realized that I had to work a lot harder. And at the time, I just thought, maybe that's just me, it's fine. And I just tried to normalize it. But looking back, I can see it was very, very draining.
Mm. And I guess, I went to school in the 1990s, and in those days, clinical psychologists or educational psychologists, even perhaps they might have been around, but I'm not really sure if I
Mm.
knew of their existence. So But like yourself in school, we all coasted along and without really paying any attention to us being different. I remember
mm,
coming across the story of a boy. He was very young, and at the age of 5, in a primary school, a teacher asked, how many fingers do you have? And he just said 12, and
mm,
everybody laughed and giggled. And he said, no, it is 12. And he just thought everybody had 12 fingers. When they looked, yeah, he had an extra small finger. To
mm,
him, it was a norm. Everybody had them. And
mm,
it was something like that. And then he had to be told, actually, what, everybody else is different and
mm,
you're special. And it's okay to be
mm,
like this. And it's those kind of moments where you like, actually, you know what, this is the world we live in, but people around me perhaps might be slightly different to me.
mm,
But it's that reassurance. It's okay to be who you are.
mm,
Um, and another cultural norm, if I can put in inverted commas, is where if somebody's struggling with ADHD, for example, and unfortunately, our British Asian culture, or even Asian culture as a whole, isn't a very passion towards that. I've heard, remarks like, "Oh, they just need a little slap on the wrist or
mm,
something like that to keep them
mm,
going. They don't need any more um, time or assurance,
mm,
etc. And we've
mm,
got to be able to, I guess, use the right channels to tackle that. And which is one of the reasons why our show came about, sending the community to
mm,
get the whole community on board, and then bringing amazing people like yourself on. Can say, hey, you know what, mom, dad, community, you want me to be a doctor? Actually, I can have ADHD and dyslexia and be a doctor. It's not the fact that as soon as I've got a label that limits my life chances of getting to the very top of where I need to be.
mm,
So, yes, you heard that right, listeners. Dr. Amruti is amazing. She's very happy to share her story, the fact that she does have dyslexia and ADHD and is a qualified GP by profession. And if you're sitting there thinking my child is exhibiting these possible traits and I don't want a diagnosis because that's going to
mm,
reduce the chances of
mm,
succeeding in life, that is not the case at all. And as we've
mm,
been talking about this over the last few shows as well, the fact that there are, strategies in place that can support that. So that was schooling. Moving on to college or sixth form,
yeah.
what was that like for you? Now you become a young adult, realizing the fact that actually I'm putting a lot more time into my studies. Were there
Mm,
particular strategies that work for you, or was there
mm.
stable? To you know what, I need some support here.
So I remember I was very kind of stressed during that time, and I just thought everyone's just stressed, so I kind of just put it down to that. But it was in my when I was doing my psychology degree, and that was in university, and I realized that I'm normally always someone who gets a first. Like I always got top of the range. And I tried so hard with all of this and I got a 2-1. I was only 2 or 3 marks away from a first. But for me, that was like my heart had broken because I was always top of the top. And so there was this one poster on the wall, and it said, if you struggle with this, and this, then you could have dyslexia. And it just fit me to the T. And I thought, oh my goodness, could this be the reason why I feel like I've been struggling this whole time? And so I went for a initial consultation, and they said, it sounds like you do, but we need to get an educational psychologist to kind of verify this. So I went to the educational psychologist, and we had a consultation, and he did the report. And he said to me, like, just straight afterwards, even before he'd written the report, I can't believe that you have done so well in your education with the immense struggles that you have. He said, you are profoundly dyslexic,
Wow.
and you need 25% extra
Um,
in exams,
mm,
extra time in exams. You need a dictaphone, you need a laptop to help you with all of these things. He said, I'm so sorry that this hasn't been picked up earlier. And in
mm,
that moment, I felt so validated. I felt so like, oh my goodness, there's a reason for all of these struggles that I've been having.
yeah,
And I've just
yeah,
been pushing under the rug because, firstly, no
yeah,
one else saw it because I was high achieving. And
mm,
secondly, I just kept thinking there was something wrong with me. Maybe I was just too anxious. Maybe I was, I didn't get things quickly. But it just gave me so much validation. And then, like how you say there's a stigma with all of these things, I realized that actually it was so like fortunate that I had found out, because that 25% extra time, the dictaphone, the laptop, just understanding my brain a bit better really helped me, because then I went on like to do my medical education, and I did really well in it because I was able to understand my brain.
Mhm. Absolutely, and thank you so much for sharing that with us, Dr. Amruti. Um, Listeners, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you have children school age and if they are struggling, please do not ignore that. Speak to them. Not every child that struggles is a naughty child, as
Mm,
our community tends to put it, or it's not because they're not good enough.
mm,
We are all blessed to be incredibly unique. Our DNA tells us that. Um, and we've got to be able to value that uniqueness. And one
mm,
of the ways we could do that as parents is by ensuring that those little darlings, if they are saying, "Oh, I'm struggling to keep up with my homework, or I can't finish it in time," it's not the case of, right, here's punishment, and you're not
mm,
going to your club after school or whatever. Try to have a conversation with them. And there's a couple of ways of going about that. One is speaking with your child, they're a part of everything you do. The other way is speaking with a class teacher if they're in primary school, if they're in secondary school, speak to subject teachers, find out which subjects they might be struggling with. When it comes to those 25% extra time that Dr. Moody was talking about, in some cases, children might not exhibit those needs in, say, subject like maths, for example, because it's all quick calculations. You can do that. Come to writing a long essay in English language, literature, religious education, history, etc. Yes, they may well take a lot longer, but it's okay to have that, because that's when the conversation moves from the subject teacher to the school Senko. And you can, as a parent, request a possible assessment with a qualified level 7 assessor for examination access arrangements. And one of those arrangements could be the possibility of being considered for 25% extra time, which is perfectly legal. It is in accordance with the JCQ guidelines. And there are a number of students in every school that are eligible for that every single year. So, in a typical secondary school, there's a cohort of 240 students. Chances are, 5-7% might have some kind of access arrangement in place. And that is to give them the level playing field that Dr. Muti was talking about. Imagine if Dr. Muti had a 25% extra time for her GCSEs, A levels, and degree. That 2-1 would have probably put in the top, 5-10% of her total grade. And simply because that would have leveled the playing field for her. She was working twice as hard, if not even more, as her peers to get to where she got to, and that was putting her at an unfair disadvantage. And
mm,
the whole idea is to get rid of the disadvantage and make it level for everybody. So do not
mm,
be put off by that at all, please, listeners. If that is the case, please, work with your young child. And through the school Senko, a referral can be made to an educational psychologist as well for additional things like possible diagnosis of ASD, which is autism, or ADHD, or dyslexia, etc. Yes, they are very long waiting lists. You heard Dr. Muti there earlier, 4 years, that's without exaggeration. Pre-COVID, we had about 6 to 9 months in Hertfordshire, Buckinghamshire. After COVID, that doubled, and the waiting list seems to be increasing each week. So if you can, and get it done privately. So if you aren't, then you've got to start the process earlier to make sure your child is not at a risk of losing out on the support they might have been able to get. Um,
mm.
if you have just tuned in, listener, you're listening to Send in the Community Show with me, Hafiz Muhammad Umar. And in today's show, I am delighted to have Dr. Amruti Choudhry as my guest. She is as somebody who has lived experience of dyslexia and ADHD, and she's also qualified GP by profession. And Dr. Amruti is very kindly sharing her journey with us before we go on to her current professional role of a life coach and what she's doing for the whole community. I wanted us to understand Dr. Chowdhury as a person, as a fellow human being, as an individual, and to value her success before we dip into the work she's doing to support others. So we've gotten as far as you getting your first degree in psychology, Dr. Chowdhury, and then you go into studying medicine, and now, am I right in assuming that you've got the access arrangements in place?
So yeah, I do now have because of the official diagnosis and the educational psychologist report, I now get 25% in all exams. So even when I was doing my GP exams, I got 25% extra time in that, and in any professional exams ongoing. So this is one of the benefits of actually understanding, because now for all the professional exams ongoing, I can request that if I need it, and that has been a real really kind thing that I did for myself, where I was able to kind of gift that to myself so I can understand and actually, as you said, provide that level playing field. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to really support my son in his journey as well, because so much of this was me not understanding myself as a child and just thinking that there was something wrong with me deep down. And I feel like because of that experience, I think that has really helped me to be very clear in helping my son understand his beautiful brain, because he often has a low self-concept of himself. And so much of the work that I've been doing, that I do with my own clients, but I've been doing with him, is really helping him to improve his self-concept. Because when you have a strong self-concept, no matter what anyone says around you, you don't have to believe that, because you trust yourself and you understand yourself.
Absolutely. So let's go back to when you first got your diagnosis. How did you respond to that, and what was your family's take, and then the wider community, particularly our British Asian community? Uh, how was that feeling once you got the diagnosis?
It was quite funny because most people were like, no, I don't agree, you're a very successful medical student, so and you've always been one of the cleverest that I know, so I don't believe it. And there's still some people who say, no, I don't agree. And it's really interesting, because I think it just shows that most people think that when you have some sort of special educational need, that's only going to come if you are not achieving certain educational standards. And what I kind of want to emphasize is everyone has their own kind of level and their own kind of potential, and the whole point of having accommodations is so that you are able to achieve your own potential. Like, the thing with my son is he's very educationally, like, he's very bright, but if he doesn't have these accommodations in place, then he's not going to be able to reach his potential. Even if he's reaching like national standards, that doesn't mean anything if he's not achieving his own personal standards. And the thing is that there's a very spiky profile, which means he's very good at certain things like, maths. But then when it comes to creative writing, he's not even keeping up in class, because that's where he struggles a lot. So it's kind of like you're able to then level the playing field and allow yourself to, thrive in the areas that you struggle with.
Absolutely, and I think that's where perhaps even the government can benefit
Mm.
from a bit of humble advice from people like yourself and others
Yes.
when they think, West Streeting last week, I think, shocked a lot of the SEN world,
Yes.
making a comment like, oh, there's an overdiagnosis. Quite frankly, when we know and there are, long list of people on the waiting list, people are struggling through the education system, and
Mm.
yet we cannot deprive them of having an assessment. We will never do that as Senkos. I'm sure CPs, you will
Mm.
agree as well.
Totally.
And more importantly, we need to fix a broken system rather than dealing with the symptoms of, what the government thinks they can't be spending more on education, health, and care. So, yeah, Mr. Streeting, if you are listening, you're most welcome to come onto our show and have a discussion and perhaps learn a thing or two about what it means to have a condition and
Mm.
fight for what is right for you. Um, and we are heading to a short break very, very soon, listeners. And when we come back, we will continue this conversation with Dr. Amruti Choudhry about her current role and how that supports people around the country in what she's able to do. Before we go to the break, we have just under 2 minutes remaining, Dr. Amruti. Just very briefly, summarize what you do at the moment, please, so listeners can know a bit more about what to expect after the break, then, please.
So right now, what I do is I really help people get to the root of their problems. So that is using mind management and nervous system regulation. So many people think that their behaviors are define them, but actually there's thoughts, feelings, and your nervous system underneath so much of that. So when you can learn how to do that, you can learn how to get rid of any of your overing or outlet behaviors like overeating, drinking, gambling, overworking, all of these kinds of things. To actually live the life that you want to live. So when you can get to that root and deal with all of the things that cause you to do that, that's when you can completely change your life. So this is the work that I do now.
Wonderful. We will get to hear a lot more about that after this short break. So, listeners, if you have just tuned in, you are listening to Sending the Community Show with me, Hafiz Muhammad Umar, and my today's guest is Dr. Amruti Choudhry. We are heading to a short break now, and Dr. Choudhry will be with us straight after the break. So please do tune in again very, very shortly. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome back to second half of tonight's Sunday the Community Show with me Hafiz Muhammad Umar. And if you were with us before the break, you will know that for today's show I'm joined by an amazing doctor called Dr. Amruti Choudhry. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Choudhry.
Thank you so much for having me again, and thank you to the listeners for taking the time out to listen.
Thank you so much for being part of our show. And listeners, if you were tuning in during the first half of the show, you will know that Dr. Amruti and I talked about Dr. Amruti's journey, Dr. Amruti as a person, as a student, and then we are now going into the second half where Dr. Amruti will share her current professional role and how that is benefiting people all around. So please do stay with us. And before we go further into that, just to remind our listeners of all the amazing things that are happening in and around Luton, Bedfordshire. Autism Bedfordshire are running a number of activities between now and Christmas. So please do check the website, check the social media page, and also alongside that, other groups like Northern Colitis have got lots going on at the moment about raising awareness of hidden disabilities, and we want to make sure you are part of that. And in terms of sports, etc., our offer of disability cricket at Luton Town Indian Cricket Club has been running this term indoors in partnership with Cricket East. That will stop for the duration of the Christmas holidays and will start again in January. So watch this space for the dates, times, venues, etc. Most likely to be in an evening at one of our local secondary schools, but we will confirm that in the next couple of weeks. So lots to look forward, and more importantly, please take extra caution around fire safety. As I mentioned earlier, we will have David Lynch from the Bedfordshire Fire Safety with us next week to talk more about the precautions we all need to be taking, not just around Christmas, but also thinking about Ramadan in a couple of weeks, a couple of months' time as well, and what we need to do to make sure we are safeguarding ourselves against fire and reducing those risks around us. So back to today's show again. And Dr. Choudhry, tell us what it actually meant for you once you qualified as a GP, because a lot of us in the British Asian culture, that's our dream, that's a parent's dream. You do well at school, right? Better you're going to be a doctor, right? And if you're not right, okay, then or a lawyer or something, being nothing isn't good enough. And actually, nothing is nothing. That we are all amazing. So, what was it like achieving that dream, becoming a doctor?
So I'll be honest with you, for so much of my life, I always thought I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I finish my GCSEs. I'll be happy when I get the grades I want in my A levels. I'll be happy when I get into medicine. I'll be happy when I qualify as a doctor. I'll be happy after I've finished my foundation training. I'll be happy after I get into GP training. I'll be happy after I become a GP. And I had that perfect life, if you look at it, like in terms of what people expect to be a perfect life, right? I was a successful GP. I had 2 children, I had an amazing husband. I had a house in London. I have my in-laws down the road. I have my parents down the road. Like literally, you can think, that's a perfect life. And deep down, I still didn't feel fulfilled or happy. And I felt quite guilty about that. I thought, I've got everything that I meant to have. Now, why am I not happy still? Why am I not fulfilled? Why don't I feel like I'm really enjoying my life? And that's when I've always been into the brain, mind management, nervous system. I've always been into it, but kind of like I've had drops in my life. And like, for example, in GP training, a coach came to give a talk and I was mesmerized. I was like, wow. And at the time I didn't take any notice of it. I just thought, oh wow, that was just an inspiring talk. But I didn't know that this was probably God putting little things in my path to be like, this is your path, like this is where I would like you to do your service so that the consciousness can be up leveled. So I must admit that it was a bit of an anticlimax because I became a GP and I thought, okay, now I'll be happy when I'm in the job I want. And I was in the job I wanted and I still wasn't happy. And so then that's when I started really diving deep into mind management and looking at, okay, how can I improve my experience? And what I realized is that it's my thoughts that create how I feel, not the things that are happening in my life. So not like the fact that I'm a doctor or a mother or anything. It's my actual thoughts about them. And I didn't really realize that before. I'd known about positive like thinking and all of that, but most of our thinking is in our subconscious brain, which means we're not even aware that it's happening. So we have 60,000 thoughts a day and only 200 to 300 of them are in our conscious awareness. So what I was realizing is there's hundreds, thousands of thoughts that I was having every single day I didn't even know I was having, and they were dictating how I was feeling, what I was doing, and the results I was creating in my life. So when I got into understanding that, I was like, okay, so now I want to start like revealing what some of those subconscious thoughts are, so I can actually dictate how I feel, so I can feel differently. I can actually change what I'm doing, and I can actually create radically different results in my life because I'm doing what's in my power and actually controlling that.
It's quite a powerful way of putting life and achievements. And I know alongside that, we as communities, as Muslims, we depicted the spirituality of what is it that when you are trying to achieve. And there is this quote I will mention, not sure if you came across this or not. It's one of the nasheeds, the religious, it's not a song as such, but quality type. And one of the lyrics in the it sticks to me. It says, "Some people are so poor that the only thing they have in life is money. Some
Mm,
people are so poor, the only thing in life they have is money." How powerful is that? Because a lot of the time people think, "Oh yeah, I need money. I'm chasing the world because I want more, I want more, I want more." Actually, really, once you go on the money, what does that buy you happiness? And
mm,
we know we just have to look at people who won the national lottery, for example. How many of those have actually lived a better life after
mm,
winning than they were beforehand?
mm,
And when we look at the most charitable individuals are quite often regarded as the most poorest,
mm,
because they have a greater heart. They might
mm,
have little, but they can give a lot. And yet, when
mm,
you look at the billionaires, even
mm,
paying their own taxes, they will
mm,
find sneaky ways of having offshore accounts, etc., registered businesses to avoid giving. Why? Because that greed comes in, and the more they have, the more they want, the more energy they're injecting into it. And so
mm,
when it comes back into unpicking all of those, actually it reduces their chances of being happy.
mm,
And sometimes, from an Islamic perspective, even a smile is a form of charity.
mm.
Well, this is what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said. If you've got nothing else to give, just smile at people.
Yes.
That alone
Yes.
alone carries that much in giving the charity. And how does that
Mm,
make you feel? How does that make the other person feel? And
mm,
chances are, if you smile at somebody, almost instantly they will smile back. Even if they're not angry with you, they will
mm.
not frown upon you. And
Yes.
so, absolutely. And trying to achieve that happiness and understanding the fact that we're all here for a limited period of time. What
Mm,
are we leaving behind? What are we
mm,
impacting others around us? And
mm,
that is so powerful. And these goals that we were talking about, some of them, I think we can see with perhaps with the element of goodness that our parents wanted us to do best. That's why, when I was at school, my dream was to become a pilot. Like
Mm,
you becoming, a GP, I couldn't get to pilot. The nearest I got was Luton Airport doing 2 weeks work experience there, and aeronautical engineering was something great. And then I wanted to play cricket, and I wanted to do other
mm,
things. And never in my wildest dreams I thought I'd become a teacher. And here I am,
mm,
some 20 odd years later, loving what I do as a teacher and as a Senko. But
mm,
again, that was those ambitions change as we grow up.
mm,
I think we as parents have to allow our children to do that. Just
mm,
because we wanted our child to become a doctor, engineer, pilot,
mm.
what have you, doesn't mean that that's what they wanted. And if that
Totally.
is what they wanted, great. And if they wanted at the age of 16 and not at the age of 25, that's also okay. You know,
Mm,
and we've got to be able to try and work alongside them. So once you have become what you become, it is important to be able to accept and celebrate the here and now, where we are now. What's the
mm.
present? What am I doing right now? That's what
Yeah,
matters the most. Not what the past was or what the future might be, or where
yeah.
we are now. And I think
Kind of
that's
just
what
on
we
that
really.
point. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, no. So go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just on that point, I feel like because of my own experience of, okay, I just went along the academic route and I didn't actually just pay attention to what my soul was saying, what I've learned from that, and that wasn't because of pressure of my parents, it was my own pressure from culture and from society, and this is what it means to be successful. And what I've learned from that is actually to actually live out my soul's purpose and to actually make an impact in this world in the most impactful way and to actually help, the souls around me. The thing that I want to do is pay attention to what my gift is and allow that to flourish. And so with my children, how that has changed is before I used to be very much like they need to be educated, education, education. But what I've realized now is how can I coach them, support them, mentor them, love them so that they are feeling like they can trust their inner knowledge, their inner wisdom, and then use God or the universe or whatever they believe in to try and guide them into their soul's purpose. So now of course, I'm still into education, but nowhere near as how much I would have been if it was just that was the only way. And so now what I'm paying more attention to is how can they learn how to manage their mind. So when their mind is telling them they can't do it, how can they learn to trust their failure, get back up, build resilience, bring their nervous system? So when they're in a fight and flight state, so in a sympathetic overdrive, which is one of our stress responses, how do they then regulate their nervous system to get back into the safe and social state? And if they're feeling very down and depressed or in a shutdown state, how do they get themselves back into the nervous system state that's going to help them thrive? And why that has been so important for me and for the children, and I invite our listeners to be able to kind of explore this, is because when they are following their own kind of gift, then they are always going to be happy in what they are doing and they're going to make the most impact. So even if you think, well, they're only just drawing all the time, why are they? That's not going to give them anything. That's not going to give them a good job. Allow yourself to follow that, because then when they are feeling happy in what they're doing, they're always going to be successful, even when they're coming against challenges. So when they can trust their gift and their inner knowing and learn how to manage their mind and regulate themselves, that makes them very resilient.
And all of that, I guess, starts with that communication. First of all, making the time for your children.
Yeah.
Within our culture, as you're saying earlier, quite rightly so, our parents were incredibly hardworking
Mm,
individuals. That's part of our blood. We want to be working equally hard,
mm,
being equally resilient. We want the
mm,
best. And sometimes we end up actually forgetting that that does
mm,
involve taking a break and spending time with the
mm.
children and getting to know them. And
Yeah.
getting to know them is far more than just making sure they're in school, they're in the best uniform, and
Mm,
they've got the best support at home
mm.
in terms of technology, etc. Actually, it's actually talking to them. And
Yeah.
what I found during COVID was during the first lockdown, especially within schools, there was a very small proportion of individuals who ended up struggling the most post COVID. And it wasn't because they did not have access to technology during COVID, many of them, they lack that human interaction. And
Mm,
once we came out of the first lockdown and went back into school, I think it was towards the end of May 2020, some of them that struggled the most mentally, emotionally, socially was from some of the most well-off families. They were not
mm,
on our radars uh, for any given category at all, and this became a new challenge
mm.
because again all those luxuries did not buy them a human interaction, human
Yes.
communication during COVID. And beyond that, one of the greatest lessons we learned is the fact that we've got to make sure our children are getting that time from each
Mm,
parent, if not at least one of the parents on a daily basis, because they've got to be able to, as you say quite rightly, be nurtured and guided towards
mm,
accepting their successes and also so-called failures as well, because
mm.
unless there is somebody to reassure them, how will they fight back if they've had a situation where they feel they've are undermining themselves? And
Yeah,
we've
they
got
need
to
to
be
feel
able to.
safe, right? They need to feel safe in, and I know that sometimes this sounds quite fluffy, especially in our community. What do you mean safety? What do you mean mind management, emotional regulation? It's often frowned upon, but there's scientific evidence, so much evidence to show that when you feel safe in your body, then actually your health is better. You're able to thrive in all areas of life. You don't get disease as much. So it's actually a one of our human needs to feel safe. And when you can get that co regulation with another human, especially your parent, that actually sets the foundation for your success and your able to your ability to thrive later on in life. And I think, and one of the main things that parents don't realize, they want to do everything for their children, but their children are mirroring what they see their parents do. Children follow what they see you do rather than follow what you say. So, for example, if you are talking to yourself very badly and being very mean to yourself just regularly on a regular basis, your children are picking up on that and seeing, oh, you know what, dad's being really hard on himself when he doesn't, go out for a walk, or mum's being really hard on herself if she doesn't make a freshly cooked meal. So that's what I need to be like to be successful because they idolize their parents. So one of the things that I work with my clients on, and which I think is so important, is actually changing the way you talk to yourself and actually being much kinder to yourself, noticing where you are kind of being really mean to yourself. How can you introduce much more kindness? How can you introduce some compassion? How can you actually model to your children that it's safe to look after yourself, and actually that's not like an added thing that you'll do after you've done all the other bits, but this is one of the core things that will help you succeed but also your children succeed because they're seeing everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. And so for this kind of coaching then, Dr. Amruti, what is the protocol, the process for any of our listeners thinking, you know what, hey, Dr. Amruti makes a lot of sense. I feel as though this is exactly what I need, perhaps on a more um, personal level where I need to have a session with her. What's the protocol for that?
So I think the first thing is understanding the human brain. So I mean, I'll talk you through like how to kind of like work with me on anything in a sec. But I think what can be really useful is because in our community we like science and we like to know what is the real reason. So there's scientific like stuff to do with the brain, and most of us are living from our primitive brain, which is that very primal part of our brain. And the sole purpose of our primitive brain is to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and stay as we are to conserve energy. So if we are not aware that we actually have a human part of the brain as well, which is the prefrontal cortex, that is the part of our brain that reasons, that's the part of our brain that thinks of delaying pleasure in the short term for the longer term gain. That's the part of our brain that can set goals and actually endure discomfort to achieve them. When we're only working from our primitive brain, which is when we're not aware, then we're always going to be surviving. So, say you are overeating to numb out boredom or to numb out, I don't know, stress or overwhelm. Our brain is going to keep doing that because right now you're alive. So your brain's going to be like, we're successful. Let's keep doing this. And that will keep you alive. But what you're doing with your prefrontal cortex is looking at, hey, this isn't really helping me. So what can I do instead? What is the food actually solving for me? How can I actually deal with the root cause of that so that I don't need to, kind of jeopardize my health to actually get what I'm seeking. And so when you can learn how to manage that prefrontal kind of chimp brain and actually use your the primitive brain and use your prefrontal cortex to actually help you, you can change any habit of your life and you can actually live in a way that really helps you. And so that's basically the work that we do. Most of my work is in the mind management of weight loss and kind of getting to the root cause. But with that, what we coach on is, okay, what is going on in your relationship, what's going on in your parenting, what's going on with your parents, what's going on at work, because all of these things are the reason why you go to the overeating or the overworking or the scrolling too much or the watching too much TV and Netflix, whatever your outlet is. That is because of all the other things that are going on in your life and your relationship with yourself. So that's what we build up. And it can be life-changing because it's not only changing you, it's changing your children, it's changing the whole community, because how you then react and relate to other people is completely different. And you're becoming more of your true self. You're kind of like wiping off the sludge that has been kind of caked on from decades of being in society and actually allowing your true essence to shine.
Amazing. So would it then rightly assume that that what would be starting point for the relationships, you offer advice on relationships between a person and the mother-in-law? Is that would that be the starting point? Now, my mother-in-law, start with yourself, or is it the other way around?
So, most people think that the other person needs to change in a relationship for me to feel better. You can't change the other person no matter what you do, but there's so much you can do to shift your thinking and your feeling. So my mother-in-law in our relationship didn't change at all. She was herself. She kept doing what she was doing. And the only person who changed in the coaching, and I was getting coached on weight loss, but most of my coaching was on my mother-in-law and my parenting and my husband and all of these things, right? And actually all of these things changed, and I shifted the weight. But it's because all of these things were weighing upon me that my outlet was food, you see. So my relationship with my mother-in-law completely changed, but she didn't change at all. She must have been doing her own inner work and stuff, so I'm not taking that away from her, but I wasn't able to access that. I wasn't able to access the thoughts of kindness towards her, of compassion, of understanding, oh, maybe she's doing this because of this, maybe this isn't about me, maybe she doesn't actually hate me, maybe she doesn't think I'm a bad mum because I haven't put a hat on my child, maybe it doesn't matter that my dal doesn't have enough salt, or whatever it is. It's kind of like, I don't have to take that offensively. I can just look at it as, I wonder why this is triggering me so much. What is it that about this that really impacts me? Why don't I look into myself and actually like get to the root of that, so that then she doesn't need to change, and also I grow whether she changes or not. And that kind of like really leaving it to like, I don't need to change her, I don't want to change her, she's amazing, and like God made her the way she is, so she must be amazing the way she is. Then I get to like work on me and get to that root. That can be really hard for people because they're like, I don't want to have to do all the work. Why should I have to do all the work? But the reason you're doing this is not for her. It's so that you feel better. That's the reason you're doing it.
And I think on that note, that's so many of our listeners can probably resonate with this. The fact that you come across people who are very good at giving other people advice. And quite often it's buckets full of advice. But the minute you ask the question, does that apply to both of us? Or is it on to me only? It's like, how dare you? I'm
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fine. It's actually you that needs to do all of
Mm-hmm.
this. And that's where I think you hit a bit of a sticky wicket, because we as human beings are prone towards, understanding what I'm doing. And quite often it's difficult to accept that we need to bring about change ourselves. And the
Mm-hmm.
minute we break that cycle, as you quite rightly put it there, the fact that let's look at ourselves and we all do this fairly and equally.
Yeah.
There's no blame as such. You do this, I do that. Actually, the only person I'm in control of is myself. Can I view this from a different perspective? An analogy
Mm-hmm.
comes to mind is, I'm sure you will have seen that diagram of the number 6 and 9, where there are two characters stood on each side and they're arguing viciously over 6, no, 9, no, 6, no, 9.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, just because from your perspective it looks like this and
Yeah.
you're right, it doesn't mean I'm wrong. And
Yes.
understanding the fact that, okay, if they are adamant that they're in the right, and I know what I'm saying, actually it's agree to disagree and move on. And
Yeah, or both of
it's
you
not,
could be right,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's okay as well. It could be that I'm right and she's right, or the six
Mm,
is right
mm,
and the nine is right, and it doesn't have to be
mm,
either.
mm, mm. And I guess agree to disagree was the fact that I can agree to disagree from my perspective, what I'm saying, But equally, yeah, they may also be right. And I think sometimes I find that particular element to be a bit more tricky and difficult for people to comprehend. We are coming towards the end of the show now.
Mm.
Time has whizzed by. So, Dr. Amruti, if anybody was wanting to reach out to you,
Yeah.
what's the best way for them to do that?
So I'm on all social media at amruti.coaching. You could go to my website, www.amruticoaching.com, or you can email me, which is amruti@amruticoaching.com. So I have groups for the root cause of weight loss for men and for women. I have a one-to-one coaching practice. And next year, I am going to be doing a nervous system focused group. So if any of this is interesting to you, I'm also going to be doing free calls for PDA parents because I realize that this is something that's not overtly out there. And I also do lots of other free calls, free coaching calls. So if you're on my list or if you're on my socials, you'll be able to access some of this information.
Really amazing. So, listener, just to clarify, Amruti is spelled Amruti coaching.com. If you remember the website, that might be a really good starting point. And from there, you can see the whole host of services that Dr. Amruti offers, and some of it is reflecting the discussions we had today. Dr. Amruti, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an
It's
absolute pleasure having you with us, and we very much value and appreciate all the amazing work that you are doing for the whole community.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure, and I really enjoyed myself. And I hope it was useful for your listeners.
Definitely. Thank you so much. So, listeners, we come to the end of the show now. Thanks once again to Dr. Amruti from amruticoaching.com. And please do stay safe. Do take care of yourselves. And we'll see you next week, inshallah, here on Sending the Community. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.